Hey everybody, welcome to What Culture Gaming. I'm Scott, joined by Josh.
Hello, man.
And we need to talk about No Man's Sky.
We do.
We do. Now, I've put about, I'm not going to lie, I've put about 30 hours into it since the next update came out. I was counting the minutes.
Since the next update came out?
Yeah. I mean, I put
That
about
was like a week ago.
40, 50 in it.
You have a full-time job. How do you get the time?
I was
You've
on
been
holiday.
for a full
I'm
week.
just in the downtime. I've literally only been playing No Man's Sky,
All
which,
right,
if you
fair
would a
enough.
quick cursory check of Twitter, seems to show that a lot of other people are also
Yes,
playing a hell of a
yes.
lot of No Man's Sky, sharing a lot of screenshots in the photo mode and just basically going on their own space exploration adventure. And
Yeah.
I just want to talk about the general state of it now because you've got a lot of questions.
Changed a lot, hasn't it? I have a lot of questions. Someone who didn't really buy into it at launch, but obviously was following all of the hoorah around it. I had a lot of friends who bought into it and were cripplingly disappointed. I know you really enjoyed it at launch.
I
though,
did.
Which is interesting. Why? I know it's changed a lot. They've added stuff like multiplayer. They've added like new
vehicles.
third-person view vehicles. The infinite building, I think that was.
Pretty much. There is a cap. I think people have found that there is a cap eventually.
Okay.
Someone once made a tower that went all the way up through the clouds and that
Right.
like eventually stops. But yeah, they've added a whole bunch of stuff. You can get vehicles. There are new ways to mine. You can get like a big freighter. You can do this whole like Assassin's Creed Brotherhood style like like micromanagement style thing where you send your freighter off with a fleet to do different missions and it brings all stuff back. But the general like overhaul is both visual and mechanical. Like you've got this whole third-person perspective. The graphics have been completely overhauled. It looks a hell of a lot better than it did in 2016. Even though I always thought it looked pretty solid back then anyway. And it just seems that they've pretty much got to where they were, what was initially advertised back in 2016. Even if you roll together everything that Sean Murray once promised, what?
Yeah, I know he promised loads at the thing, right? I'm not saying that it's not in a great state now, but a lot of people were disappointed in this game, Scott.
Oh, hell yeah.
How can this convince them to come back to it? If this is like what you said, if this is just what they promised at launch, and I'm actually on Sean Murray's side, I think that the marketing spin got well out of control for that game. Sony and the developers were at fault, but also player expectations were just wild, and there was clear miscommunication there in the game people expected was never going to be the one that came, and obviously I think there's fault on both sides, but even then, why should those people care now?
Well, that's firstly to address the Sean Murray thing. Like, there's no getting around it. Some of the things he said were just flat out lies.
Yeah.
They're not anymore because he's actually gone back and put the features back in, or the team have put the features back in. But you can't get around the fact that some of the things that he said, especially if you look at his appearance on Colbert, is just not going to happen. He did a very honest interview with The Guardian very recently, where he just said that I wish I had more time. These things were going to be in the game, and he's obviously going to say that now. But he's just sort of like, well, it was a victim of circumstance and marketing and production schedules and whatever. But in terms of going back to it now, like it's a demonstrably different game. Like you're still doing a lot of mining. Like I mean, the base like gameplay loop is survival, and it's like going out there, getting elements, crafting different things, mining different things, and just building a better character, whether that be through weapons or tech upgrades, like suit upgrades, better ships, and getting things like the freight or whatever, and gradually just exploring the universe. There is a story in here now, which actually came with one of the updates. I think it was like last year, the Atlas Rising update. I think that was the one on Pathfinder, one of the two. But now there is a proper story. It's not cutscenes and voice acting, but it's text-based. Yeah. To be honest, it does actually take you in quite an interesting direction if you like sci-fi and sci-fi mysteries and space mysteries, and I do, because it's just sort of like, here's this mysterious code broadcasting across the universe, and what does it mean? And you kind of pick it up and you start talking to other aliens about it, and they get freaked out by it.
Right.
And there's all that, and so you can go down that route if you want. But that also doubles as a tutorial, which introduces you to everything from base building to racing your cars to whatever. You can actually build race tracks, and if you do multiplayer, you can race together. Space racing. And there's all that kind of thing. But it also, at any given time, you can just bring up the log and just do free-form open exploration. And that's where all the procedurally generated stuff comes in.
And this is where I sort of draw the line and jump back in, because I think it looks really good. And I've
gorgeous looking at
got
the minute.
Scott Tailford's seal of approval, which obviously
means absolutely nothing, but it's nice to put out there. So,
but the thing that's stopped me from getting it, even though it's in the sale for like a tenner,
something like that, it's fluctuating.
Does it have a purpose? And I know the whole point is sort of like, there is no kind of purpose. At the end of the galaxy, there is just another galaxy. But for me, it sounds like they just kind of added more stuff for you to do rather than a kind of central through line of you to follow. It's sort of like, it's there if you want to do it. You don't have to. And for me, personally, those games, I can only get so much out of. I need a little bit of direction. And if I'm just doing sort of the same stuff over and over again, it sends me into a kind of existential crisis, which I'm sure this game wants me to have, but I'm not sure if that's fun for someone like me, and I assume an audience audience. Like,
See, that's the thing. Back at launch, that was the main question. What do you do in No Man's Sky? And the answer was you just do. You just do things, and that is the reward in itself. And it's more akin to like Minecraft, where it's just like it is a survival game. So you want to go out and collect stuff and build things, and that is the loop. Like, and there is like gratification and satisfaction in that. Like, you know, surviving. And then the more planets that you go to, they've tweaked the algorithm so it throws like crazy stuff at you, whether that be like skyscraper-sized dinosaurs or massive plants.
Is that giant snake from the first trailers in yet?
He's not. There are giant snakes underwater, but not, and flying ones as well. But not that specific one. But that means that you have to tackle like weather storms and things like that, which change the way that the gameplay works because you've got to look for specific minerals to top up your items and things like that. So there is that, but it is entirely freeform. And that, like for me, like that's such a weird thing to get lost down. Like, what do you actually do? What's the purpose of this? Because I think you can apply that to pretty much the whole survival genre.
Yes.
Like it's just the satisfaction of surviving in it, and you've got to have that whole sci-fi pull. Like if you just like being in a sci-fi world, where the whole sort of imagery is very like Asimovian. Like, you know, you take those old sort of 70s, 80s sci-fi boot covers, and it's just like everything's like hyper neon colored, like bright electric pink or bright blue or bright green, and it's like you just kind of get lost in that. There's a whole character customization thing. So if you want to just be this like weird genderless tiny rabbit thing with like a weird glowing backpack,
which I do,
and you can also be a creature that just doesn't even have a head. It has like an orb and like spinning things around its head.
Also, which I do,
which is pretty good. And and so you can go out and just be those kind of things. And it's literally like they've kind of made for sci-fi what I think Bethesda or Elder Scrolls or even Kingdom Come did for like fantasy or just living that role.
Yeah.
And it's like it's entirely what Sean Murray like sold it as. It's like, do you want to be a bounty hunter? Do you want to be a trader? Like, do you want to just kind of get by as an explorer? Now you can finally do those things, and there are like worthwhile, I would say, feedback mechanisms in place, or you know, like gameplay loops in place to do that stuff.
Yeah, because like the worry for me was at launch. I know there was infinite planets, but there was a lot of sort of like reused assets. You were doing kind of like the same things over and over again, and you were just kind of surviving day to day to sort of get to another planet. This sort of feels like you're not just surviving anymore, but like trying to, I know it's a bit of a cliche, but you're living now. You're surviving to do things rather than simply to survive.
Yeah, and I mean, even the original one back in 2016 still had little things to do. You could still chase the space relics and find Nada and Polo, which are these two characters, and they kind of like tapped into what little semblance of a story there was. And you found out about the whole, basically the whole comment back in 2016's one was this whole idea of what if the universe was a construction. It was kind of like a meta comment on the game itself. How much purpose can you find within that? And that was the whole philosophical comment on life. And that's still in the new one, but it's a little bit more different. But in terms of the way that the objectives roll out, there's always something to do.
Yeah.
Like, and it's just whether that means, because they've got a whole mission board now as well. Like you can take like spare quests if you want to specialize and work towards the Mercenaries Guild. You can go and shoot down ships and hunt specific species and things like that. But it just feels like there's always something to do. That's kind of why I put so much time into it.
Yeah.
Because it's quite simple in terms of the base mechanics. You're running, jumping, like shooting stuff or mining, and that's kind of really it. You can only see fly ships and stuff, but because it's very easy to just like hoover up a whole bunch of elements, craft a bunch of stuff, turn them in, get some rewards, go to the next planet.
Yes.
Like I find that to be an extremely addictive gameplay loop. It's obviously bolstered by the fact that it's sci-fi themed, because I just love being in a sci-fi world. Yeah. But I kind of think this is one of the like just ultimate sci-fi games. You can just think of any role from any movie in a sci-fi context and just live that role.
But it's so
and it's great,
enticing, and I know that was kind of what it was promised at launch. But I've been playing devil's advocate in this video so
as well.
Far,
you should, considering 2 years worth of.
That's the thing. But it has been 2 years since that launch, and at what point do we just? People need to get over that initial launch, and I know people were burnt. I know lies were said, but this is a demonstrably different game from what they got, and everything has been, as far as I know, free so far.
Yeah, everything's free. There's no microtransactions. There's no DLC packs in terms of paying for them. Everything is free. All the updates are free.
And I know you can sort of do that thing of it should have been there at launch, but it's there now, and it's been 2 years, and this is a very different game, and I feel like people should be able to enjoy it.
That's it's gonna be a personal thing for everybody who's watching as to how much they can accept like this redemptive arc that Hello Games are kind of on, because we've seen other games go from complete crap to amazing. Look at Rainbow Six Siege.
Exactly.
Like, there are plenty of games
complete crap.
Well, it wasn't good at launch, was it?
Ewan.
Bring the man in. But you think of these games that it's sort of a mark of the industry. Like developers have a way to improve their games over time, and they're doing it, and they're responding to fan feedback. Obviously, with No Man's Sky, there was a very obvious list of stuff that needed to be in there from the beginning, and that's kind of what they've done. Like Sean Murray just said, the only way I responded to the criticism was I got my head down and I just worked through it. The whole team have just worked their asses off for 2 years, and you can see it. It looks like a AAA game, just graphically, made by a tiny team. Obviously, they've hired a lot of people since the initial 13 people, but it gives off that vibe of a big production, and that
Yes.
is enough for me to paper over any remote cracks to do with bugs and glitches.
I'm with you. I think the sticking point for me that I've actually just thought that I didn't really realise the other side of the argument is I mentioned earlier I could pick this game up now for a tenner and have like the full experience. I suppose it's completely different if you spend 40, 50 pounds on it at launch and you get the bare bones thing and have to kind of wait for it to be completed over time. I know that's a completely different style of investment. I guess you would be more burdened because you put your faith into a project that you didn't really see.
I mean, it's strange for the people who spent the money at launch and really didn't like what they got, and obviously they were like potentially counting on the multiplayer stuff or the faction warfare, the things that were shown at the E3s where the game was at. Totally understandable if you're like, you know what, F this game, I'm done. I always thought there was enough to love in the first game. I just loved it as a space survival game, and it's just that is still the core of it. But you have a lot of progression systems outside of that, lots of stuff to unlock, whether that be material based or ship based or cars or whatever, things like that. And I do think that there's enough, but it's strange. It's a hell of a marker on the industry. Like it's one of the biggest disappointments ever. Like historically, one of the most like over the top. Oh my god, this thing is a train wreck. And then now there's so much positive buzz.
Yeah.
And it's like, what does that mean for a consumer? What does that mean for like the state of the industry? Can they get away with shipping something bad and fixing it later?
Well, I think the big sticking point is that it has been free. Like a lot of these games that have started out a bit poorly have released free content. Like we said, Siege, there are microtransactions in there, but you are never locked away from like sort of new maps, new tweaks, new game modes, and stuff like that. All of that is free, and I think that sort of cultivates a really nice atmosphere.
Goodwill.
In a goodwill that we're not used to in an industry that just wants to get all your money, you know what I mean? Like, it's strange for such an expansive change to happen and be free.
I'll put it that way. That's another thing as well, and may potentially end on this unless you have any other questions. But the way that Next feels is like it's a sequel. Like any other developer would have made this a sequel, and would have literally just gone like, "Here's everything, we got it right, and here just give us another 40 quid, and we promise it's fine." Whereas they've just gone like, "No, we know our reputation is hanging on this," and I genuinely think that they do want to make great games. I mean, if their hearts weren't in the right place, they would have taken the money and ran, and they made a lot of money. So like they could have easily just gone, and that's not to say that he didn't lie on stage or that things didn't go sideways. But there is also the brass tacks fact that what No Man's Sky is now is such a better product in every single way.
It's really interesting you mentioned No Man's Sky too. Do you think this is going to be a sort of like a platform for future content? You think it's going to always roll out this way, or do you think there will eventually be a No Man's Sky?
No, I think it'll be a platform. Because it's even strange referring to it as No Man's Sky Next.
Yes.
Which I guess you could argue that is a sequel, but it's still the base game being iterated on. But yeah, I think they've built a platform. The No Man's Sky name is a household name for better or worse, mostly worse. But assumedly they can slowly turn it around because of conversations like this, where someone checks it out and goes like, actually, it's really good. Which is what like Siege kind of like thrived on for a while. Warframe too, like, has become one of the biggest games in the world off the back of people talking about it.
I wish I knew what the player base was compared like now, because like you said, there's been No Man's Sky, because like you said, there's been like a huge resurgence. I wonder how many of those are people who don't really know much about the controversy, just like, I'm going to give this a go. I've heard a lot of good things now, and how much of it is people who have actually returned from that initial disappointment and come in. I mean, I don't know whether the controversy, it's still very relevant, but to an audience of like people who maybe weren't into games then, or people who were just picking up on a whim, like the casual market, I suppose, would be beneficial for this. And I don't know if that's good or bad, to be honest.
No, I mean, I think that's probably worth like a separate video, because it's like the thing that it comes down to is the intent. Like, how much is a developer shipping a half-baked game, knowing they can fix it later, and trying to cash in on certain mechanics and things like that. We've seen a million examples of that, whether that be Mass Effect Andromeda or whatever. But I think that No Man's Sky's heart's in the right place, and you can feel it. Like, it feels ambitious, and it feels like everything that they initially wanted to do. Personally, I can get away with that mainly because I always liked the vision that it was back in 2016. But the version that it is now is just kind of remarkable to see, considering the team size, considering everything. The fact that they've brought it all together is kind of lush and kind of amazing. So yes, I'm a huge fan. I implore you guys all to check it out and let us know what you think down in the comments below. I've been Scott from McCulture.com.
I've been Josh from McCulture.com.
I'll catch you soon.
Bye.
Goodbye.